When I first came to Middle Church 21 years ago with my infant daughter strapped and her baby Bjorn to my chest, our beautiful old sanctuary was a slightly emptier place than it would soon become. The congregation was diverse in race, ethnicity, gender, age, and sexual orientation, though not as diverse as it is now. In terms of Asian American Pacific Islanders, we were more or less looking at about 3 of us. I still remember how Gloria's and my eyes met across the pews, how we nodded, you and I, yes, here we are, Asian Americans in a non-Asian space. That sense has changed, as has much else. When I first came to this progressive church 2 blocks from our East Village apartment, it was because I wanted to give my daughter the experience I had growing up in a justice-seeking church, in my case, the Unitarian Church. I kept coming back because the Tiffany windows, the vast space, the music and people and voices kept little Gracie transfixed and quiet. I came back because of the kindness, the welcome showed me and my daughter in a city where we were used to being shushed, not ushered in. Reverend Gordon Drott's inclusive, joyful worship gave way to Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis's even more fiercely inclusive one, and I kept on coming to Middle to soak in the sermons and the message of radical love. I knew I had to stay and sink my thirsty, thirsty roots even more deeply into its theology. I had to be a part of this holy experiment, this movement, and here's why. All my life, I've had to leave parts of myself at the door of most rooms I entered. I've had to edit myself, which parts depended on the context. At colleges and universities where I've taught, I've had to edit out the mother who sometimes had to rush home to a sick child. I had to edit out the writer who loved literature more than theories about literature, the woman who loved to dance, and who in her writing courses privileged her students' life stories over so-called academic rigor. Though it said that institutions of higher learning are liberal or leftist, I often had to edit out my politics. When it came to race and ethnicity, to being the daughter of a more or less white mother and Chinese American father, that was the most complicated editing job of all. In the 1980s, I found myself staring with fake appreciation into the eyes of white boyfriends when they sang the song that for many young Asian American women was the scourge of that decade, David Bowie's Little China Girl. I looked away from the dark, hungry stares of the Vietnam vets who told me I reminded them of someone they'd met in Da Nang. I held my tongue when my white male boss, the managing editor of the New Mexico Daily newspaper where I worked in my 20s, assigned me the email password Cherry Blossom, then sexually harassed me right out of the newsroom. Later, at faculty parties in the Midwest, where I first started teaching, I smiled and answered when asked what did I think of Amy Tan and where did I learn to speak such good English. Lately, I've been careful to go out masked and with sunglasses and hat so people might not recognize the old Chinese woman in me. When it comes to the latest wave of anti-AAPI, violent extremist hate, I am one of those many in the demographic crosshairs. On the other side of the ethnic equation, I've endured too many Chinatown banquets where the great uncles talked on and on about white devils while my white mother and brother and I sat across the round table from them. I've been not Chinese enough, and I've been enough of a Chinese woman to have been talked over, not listened to, not heard. Which is why I've not only kept on coming to Middle, but have joined the movement, served on its board of consistory, and now serve on the church's reparations task force. At Middle, there is a place at the table for all of us. There's a place for all of our voices and stories. Since my first days here, when there were only 3 AAPI people in the pews, we now have a glorious choir and meaningful representation on the consistory and staff. Each year for years, we've celebrated the Lunar New Year, at which a half Chinese, half white woman like me has sometimes been part of the worship. Middle also has added AAPI Heritage Month to what I half jokingly call the liturgical calendar. Middle's theology of fierce love depends on all of us in this diverse congregation really seeing each other as whole people in the fullness of our glory, unedited, messy, our histories and dueling truths wrapped around us like shining flags. All of us matter. You matter. Your voice matters. Your stories matter. Your membership matters. Your gifts of money, of time, of both matter. Look down at those captions and in the chat for all the various ways you can give, for all the various ways you can join us. Then come and join us. Just a click away. We have work to do together.